Yeah. So first of all, I want to thank all the subscribers. Appreciate you guys for fucking with me. Today I want to, keep it light. It's Saturday, so I'm gonna talk about my opinion of Richie Aprile from The Sopranos. Now they have like dozens and dozens of characters on that show. A lot of people that I could get to. I probably won't get to everybody, but there definitely are a lot of like quality people on there to just like trip out on and shit. So the first one I want to do is, well, actually I did Chris last week, so I'm gonna do Richie today, who was an antagonist, and he was fucking like, man. Now to me off the bat, Richie is somebody who does not like. There's a few things about him. Like he's straight up gangster. Like don't get me wrong, this motherfucker's G with it, right? Like this fool's fucking psycho, and he's gonna do what he has to do. Like he's a gangster and shit. However, uh, there's two things wrong with him. First thing is he doesn't play well with others, right? Like this motherfucker is like thinks he is this tough shit. Like he has everything. He knows what he's doing. So that's the first thing that's wrong with him. The second thing that's wrong with him is he doesn't know how to adapt to the times. So while he was in the joint, things changed. Like it's not the same anymore, right? And he comes out and he thinks it's all gonna be like fine and dandy and shit. He's gonna be able to just get his old shit back and what like he thinks everything's owed to him. He doesn't understand the most important rule of being on the streets. You're only as good as your last transaction. And that's how it is on the streets, for real. Like, I'm gonna give you an example. If I were to go back to the streets right now, like, not that anything's wrong with me, right? But like the homies know me, they respect me and shit. I'm cool, right? But if I were to go over there trying to bark orders, trying to step on toes and shit, fools are gonna be like, man, who the fuck is this fool? He hasn't even been around in years all of a sudden. You know what I mean? And that's kind of like Richie. Yeah, he just got out the joint and he may have did his thing in there, but out here life moves on. So, that was a fucked up thing for him. He didn't understand how how much things had changed, and he really stepped on a lot of toes and did a lot of dumb shit. Yeah, so one thing I think he did that was like stupid as fuck is fucking with Tony's cash cow, that Beansies guy, right? Like, leave it alone, man. Like, you'll make your money, right? Like, they're fucking mobsters. You guys all make your money, but he had to take that one because he took everything way too fucking personal, rather than looking at it as business, rather than saying like, okay, I'm gonna get this food later. First, let's clean him out, because Tony does eventually end up cleaning that fool out anyway. So he tries to go to Junior because he knows Junior and Tony aren't seeing eye to eye, and he's like, hey, let's take this fool out. Junior's a scandalous motherfucker, so he's on board, but he's like, he doesn't want to be attached to that shit, right? And he wants to make sure that this fool has captains behind him. And sure enough, he can't do it. Like, he can't get the fucking captains behind him. Nobody wants to take out Tony. Like, it's too much of a risk for everybody, right? So he's on his own. He doesn't know what to do. You know what I mean? And Junior's just like, hell nah, this fool's not as popular as I thought he was. And again, that goes back to, you're only as good as your last transaction on the streets. Like, he didn't understand that shit. He still thought he was this big dog. Well, he was a big dog, but like, he still had all this influence, but he didn't have shit. And it was fucked up for him. So he tries to me, I thought this is something that's very important when he tries to give Tony the jacket, right? Because it's a jacket that fits Tony. And what does he say? Like, oh, I punked fucking Rocco DeMeo. Like, fucking, I took his jacket and shit, right? The toughest guy in Essex County is what he kept saying. Over and over. Kept bringing that shit up. I think he did that shit for two reasons. One of them, I think he was like, trying to get on Tony's good side, trying to kind of bury the hatchet, like, see, like, okay, we good, like don't worry about it, right? Another thing he wanted to show everybody when Tony was wearing it, he wanted to bring it up, like, hey, that's that jacket I gave you, Tony. Tell him how I gave it, who I took it from. So he would like say the story again, right? Like he's the kind of guy that wants to hear the same, like wants to say the same stories over and over and shit. And yeah, so he gives Tony that jacket, And the crazy thing about that jacket is it fits Tony, right? So obviously this shows something else too, that he was able to punk somebody way bigger than him, about Tony's size, basically kind of sizing up Tony right there. Like, fool, like, don't even try. I got at fools as big as you. You know what I mean? Like showing how kind of tough he is and shit. But Tony doesn't really like the jacket, and it kind of keeps the tension between them. You know what I mean? Which is a trip. It's a fucking jacket, and but yeah, it keeps the tension between them and shit. And this is one thing that I tripped out on Richie. He's a fucking psycho. Like, for real, he cannot separate anything. Like, for him, it's 0 to 100, and there's no separation of the streets. There's no separation of business. There's no separation of intimacy. All of that shit for him has to be violent. All of it is just fucking, like, he's nuts for real. He's a psychopath. Like I said, he definitely wouldn't make a good gangster, like, because he's about his shit. You know what I mean? But more of a soldier. But at the end of the day, his outcome is gonna be the same as anyone that lived like him. You know what I mean? But unfortunately, it was Janice that killed him. I always had a problem with that shit. I was like, man, that's kind of a fucked up way to kill such a powerful antagonist. Like, his girl shot him, but then again, like, not everybody on the streets goes out in a hell of glory. Like that doesn't happen. Like, no, there's some people who just overdose. There's some people who get killed by family members, and but yeah, Richie was definitely something. Like, he was a trip, man. So Richie had some fucking issues, and yeah, so that's what I think about Richie. I think that he couldn't adapt to the new times. I think his thinking was outdated. Um, if he were to be able to really separate everything that was going on, the business, the gangster shit, like, he had to separate it. He tried too hard to keep everything together. Again, he was too old school, not knowing this shit had evolved already. And unfortunately, he didn't evolve. And what happens when you don't evolve? You become obsolete. And that's what happened to him. He became more of a problem than an asset. And that was really unfortunate, because there's another antagonist I want to talk about later who was more of an asset and made it extremely difficult for Tony to get at him. You know what I mean? But in this case, Richie was just a fucking pain in the ass who was living off his past reputation and his family's connections, like who his family was and shit. So, that was he had it coming, honestly. I like the actor. The actor did a phenomenal job, but the character was a real piece of shit, if you ask me. Like, he got on my fucking nerves. But that shows how great the actor was. And yeah, that's my opinion of Richie. I'm out. Peace.